relationship do you see in UFOs and Stonehenge and these so-called landing strips that they found in South America?
Oh, there's plenty. All right, get Genesis 6. Now, somebody asked this question this week. We went through it pretty much detail, so I won't go through a lot again. But, brother, could you have that encyclopedia up here? All right. Genesis 6, verse 1. Again, Schofield notes are off. You notice you just happen to hit the two places where it's off, but every place is off will be connected with the revelation of the devil. The devil's very interested in covering up his tracks. The best way to do it is through premillennial scholarship. Genesis 6:1, it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, the daughters were born to them, men, not Cain, that the sons of God, not the sons of Seth, so the daughters of men, not the daughters of Cain, that they were fair and took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man one, for he also is flesh. Something else down there is flesh too, and it's not man. Also is flesh. Yet his days should be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days. So all those monuments are big. I don't care where you go, they're big. Somebody said, well, you know, they got Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Rushmore, big monument made to them, and they're big too. Yeah, but that's just copying the heathen. The heathen always did have them big. And the heathen go even better than that. The heathen would build temples for them big enough to get into, which Americans haven't learned how to do yet. You go to the Smithsonian Institute and find images and statues of things, but they don't have a roof in there 35 feet high. Those rooms over there at Kharkov and around Egypt are 35, 40 feet high. Whoever came in there didn't want to bump their head in the ceiling when they came in. Verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. After what? After the times of Noah. This is the times of Noah. Look at verse 9. There are giants on the earth before the flood and after the flood. Therefore the giants are not the daughters of Cain, or the sons of Cain. They were all drowned in the flood. If there were giants in the earth before the flood and after the flood, then those things came from an unlawful situation between aliens from outer space and men. And since they were here before the flood and after the flood, then only one of two things could have possibly happened. And those giants here after the flood in Deuteronomy 1 and Deuteronomy 2. In Deuteronomy 1 and Deuteronomy 2, they're called Emims, Zamzamims, Anakims, Horites, and there's another word for them, Rephaim, in there, and Nephilim, come to think of it. So those things are on the earth before and after the flood. We know they're on the earth after the flood because in Numbers 13, when the spies go up to spy out the land, they come back, and they said the Anakim are there, giants in stature, and we were in their sight but grasshoppers. Then we know they're on the earth after the flood because when Goliath of Gath shows up to fight against the Philistines, 1 Samuel chapter 18, he has 4 brothers. All right, if that thing came from sons of God and daughters of men, then only 2 possibilities are open. Those things showed up on this earth before the flood from someplace out there, and after the flood they came down again. Or else they showed up on this earth before the flood and were here, and when the flood came they hid out someplace under the water. All right, 6:4. And when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, they bore children to them, and the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. All right, now the remnant of those things all over the earth. And that thing at Stonehenge, and that thing at Easter Island, and all that stuff of Greek and Roman mythology, and Diana and the Apollos and Venus and all that stuff, and the Lorelei in Germany, she's usually blonde-headed. She's blonde hair. Minerva has blonde hair. Why Minerva should have blonde hair, I don't know. Minerva's a Greek. Why they all have blonde hair, I don't know. The first pictures of Mary had blonde hair on them. Raphael's painting of Mary. The Virgin Goddess is a blonde. Or at least the top of her head shines with something. And all those remnants back those old days are remnants of gods and goddesses who were here and were giant in size. Now, in regards to the date on them, I've tried to reduce it and boil it down where it won't take all day to read, but I'll read you the data from 35 books on it. 1104. Now this is data from about 35 books on UFOs and where the gods here and are they coming again, and if they come, won't they bring peace on earth, goodwill to men, all that stuff. And all these, without exception, all these books about outer space always picture these things when they're coming as helping us out. They all come that way. So they're all incorrect. All right, now here's the date on it. Between Peru and Bolivia, Peru, The book you loaned me, where's that young fellow was here? Loaned me a book I read through yesterday. He went a while ago. Gave me a book by Thor Frider something, Kentucky, on excavations at Easter Island, where they prove that those statues were set up by people from Peru. And the people from Peru were supposed to have long ears and red hair. Between Peru and Bolivia, Altiplano is Lake Titicaca, called the center of the earth by the boys out in Easter Island, Melanesia and Polynesia. 122 miles long, but 35 miles is the stone of the jaguar sitting up there. Tiwanaku is 13,000 feet above sea level. The Dead Sea is 13,000 feet below sea level. 13,000 feet above sea level cannot support crops or cattle, but there's a temple up there that would have taken 100,000 workmen to build and would take 10,000 people today to build it. It has one statue in it that weighs 20 tons, and it has blocks that weigh 50 tons apiece. And if there were 10,000 people up there doing it, they couldn't have lived. There's no crops and no place to put cattle. It's just stone cold, no rain, jungle up on top of that place. And here's blocks, 50 tons. Pyramid has a bunch of stuff in it like that, 50 and 20 tons. And the question comes up, who could have moved them? Well, they'd have to be pretty big to move. All right, here's the Perry Reese map, found in the Library of Congress by Captain Orange and Mallory, found in Constantinople in 1929. The map is dated 1513. That'd be 23 years after Columbus. The map is laid out with Antarctic located with pinpoint accuracy, with mountain ranges that nobody knew were on Antarctic till 1952. If somebody in 1513 knew about the Antarctic continent, the South Pole, and had the mountain ranges mapped on it, the Admiral Byrd didn't find when he went down there in the 1920s and 1930s. The Mount Perry's map is a circular map showing the Earth's surface, and the center of that map is the Great Pyramid in Egypt, Cheops. The center of that map comes right on top of the pyramid. It's right near Cairo, where all your manuscript, your new Bibles come from. Manuscript, your new Bibles, all Egyptian manuscripts. They come from North Africa. Well, shut my mouth. All right. Plato, 427, writing on Atlantis. Got the material from Critias, who heard a story from his great-grandfather, from a man named Solon, who was an Egyptian priest. Cairo, North Africa, in Egypt. September 1st, 1968, Carlos Dinsetti, 3:30, heard voices from a circular machine overhead, and the voice said, "Mathematics is the universal language," the voice said. So the Great Pyramid is all laid out mathematically with the mathematical measurements in it. And Einstein, before he dies, somebody tried to lead him to Christ. He says, "I can't believe in a God who's not a mathematical formula." Well, he'd have done well to believe. I mean, God's a God of order, amen? Amen. Then don't you know he has the whole thing laid out mathematically with precision? He don't make any mistakes on it. Nasser, President Nasser could not move 80-foot statue from a desert to a park in Cairo. They took cranes, bulldozers, and tractors and could not move it. There are 90 pyramids in Egypt with no record on how to build them or even why they were built. Here's Nasser with American ingenuity trying to move an 80-foot statue from a desert to a park in Cairo, and cranes and bulldozers couldn't move the thing. They finally got some of those statues moved out of the way of the Nile, and got them a dam built there. When they built the dam, it poisoned all the fish, and people have been dying like flies over there and ruining the crops. And the Bible says in Isaiah, the idols of Egypt shall be moved, and the waters by the marshes shall fail, and the people will die. You got a King James Bible, you got a tough book. A fertilizer salesman named Reinhold Schmidt was picked up by a flying saucer and taken to Egypt, into a hidden chamber in a pyramid, where he said he saw dark paper of heavy quality written in modern English. That is, English. Like a lion. Got a mouth like a lion. Speaks English. And it said, quote, "The end of the present cycle in the earth is 1998. A slab of stone with ciphers was found in 1885 near Bat Creek, Tennessee." Now, you Tennesseans, where is that? Bat Creek, Tennessee. I know where Bat Creek, Tennessee. I know where Shape Rag, Tennessee is. Back here. Whereas you have the craziest names any place I've been in my life. God, I remember these double names around here. Sandpit, Oklahoma, or Bat Creek, Tennessee. The writing is not Cherokee, but ancient Hebrew. What's ancient Hebrew doing on a Bat Creek, Tennessee thing in 1885? A similar stone was found by Manfred Metcalf at Fort Banks in 1968, had samples of Minoan writing on it. Minnow is an ancient Crete, just off the Egyptian coast. The book this guy loaned me about these folks coming from Peru to Easter Island said they originally came from Egypt. Well, that Egypt sure figures. You know that thing? That thing sure do pop up, don't it? If you went to Bob Jones Tennessee Temple or Springfield or Fort Worth or Dallas or Midwestern or Mid-South or Northeast or Northeastern by Midwestern or South-Southeast and whatever it is, the first thing they'd tell you is the Westcott North Greek text is superior to the King James. The Westcott North Greek text is the Egyptian text from Alexandria, Egypt. That'd be a strange place to look for the truth. The Ute tribe in America are racially and linguistically different from all North American tribes, and they say, quote, "We came as the sun came, and we went as the sun went." They say they came to America not across the Bering Straits, but across from Africa to South America, and then up. 2 migrations. All right? For example, you asked about Stonehenge. Those stones are set up so when the sun and moon come up, they form certain shadows and patterns around those things on a scale, and the measurement that's found throughout Stonehenge is a ratio that runs 9.6, 9.6, 9.6, all the way around that way. Come out in halves to 4.8, 4.8, 4.8. That is 4 feet and 8/10 of a foot, 4 yards and 8/10 of a yard. That kind of business. The UFOs show up every 4 years and 8 months. And they show up so regularly that when the flap of them comes, my sources, my underground, tells me when they're going to come, and they never missed a check. You talk about predictions. Boy, February, they contacted me and said, "This is the year for the flap." And they hadn't been a word through January and February. They said, "This is the year for the flap." But they don't come in even 5 years. They come 4 years and 8 months. And he said, "This is the year for the flap." And boy, about 30 days later, in they came. And boy, March, April, May, June, July, 2 million people have seen them in the last 6 months. The next one will be 4 years and 8 months as sure as you're sitting in that chair. They don't miss. Atom bomb at New Mexico. And I know these things sound, kind of scattered apart. But the more you get these things together and put them together, the more you see that somebody's been here. And they've been here and left markers that tell things about coming again. Well, at the atom bomb in New Mexico melted sand and fused it together. They have found identical glass objects of melted sand fused together called tektites that are supposed to come from the meteoric origin of the moon. These are found in Baalbek, east of Beirut and north of Damascus in Syria. Baal was the sun god. The significant cycle in Stonehenge is 18.6 years. This is 9.6 for UFO flaps. That is 2 in a period of 9 years and 6 months. Atlantis, the god Atlantis that set up the city under the sea, was supposed to have red hair. The inhabitants of Atlantis were supposed to be cannibals who acted as vampires. Others had long blonde hair. So when they put up those images in Easter Island, they put a big red stone on top of their head. Long-haired blonde men and black Cadillacs were all over Dallas before the assassination of JFK, 1963, and the Beatles didn't get to America until 1965. There was no big fad for long hair until 65 when the Beatles got over here. But in 63, they were all over Dallas. Long-haired blonde men with black Cadillacs. Now, you see, you believe all that stuff? No, I'm just telling you what they've observed, see? Now, if that thing is true, wouldn't it be something? Did you read over there about those demons in Revelation 9, where it said they had face like men and hair like what? Women. And if that weren't enough, black Cadillacs have shown up at the home of almost everyone who professed to have seen a flying saucer. Some of them are now in mental hospitals. Well, they get paid a visit by a black Cadillac.
Finally, we have perhaps the most conclusive evidence of the real Men in Black on this list. It comes in the form of CCTV footage captured from within a hotel lobby. It was April 2012 at a hotel in Canada, and the manager was a little disturbed when his bellboy informed him that the previous day the hotel had been visited by 2 tall men dressed completely in black who demanded to speak to him. They had heard the manager had been speaking of a UFO sighting he claimed to have recently encountered. Upon discovering the manager was not around, these men had stirred up a frenzy, talking about government and conspiracy theories. They apparently had no facial hair, no eyebrows, and were incredibly tall. But scariest of all, they apparently had identical faces. And as mentioned before, both can be seen in this surveillance footage, the only footage of these agents ever released on the internet.
Now, wouldn't it be something if that whole movement to get that long hair in here was so that whatever was there could move in around among you and you couldn't spot it? I'm not saying it's so, but I say, wouldn't that be something? Entertaining demons unawares? I just steer clear of them, brother. I just steer clear of them. Hans, good old Hans, Hans Horbinger, in 1913 wrote a book called Glacial Cosmogony. He had captive moons passing by the world and huge spheres of ice crashing into the planet, which tore up the seas and reshaped the surface of the mountains. He called it the doctrine of eternal ice, and this will be the sign of the regeneration of the German people. Four moons guided four epochs, producing monster animals and giant men. This also found in a work by Paulus and Berger called The Morning of the Magicians. So when Donald Patton wrote his book called The Biblical Flood and the Ice Age Epic, he said that a moon came sailing by here, a planet, dumped off ice, and hauled up the mountains. And I must confess that Donald Patton's book is the most logical explanation of the mountain ranges, orogenesis, I've read anywhere. But he didn't just get it anywhere, he got it from Hans. And Hans Horbinger said that ice had something to do with the new birth. So down there at those chemical plants, I guess they're trying to freeze corpses or freeze them before they die, are they? And then bring them back to life later on. Eternal ice supposed to preserve the body. Jupiter is a cold star. It's cold. 86,000 miles diameter with a red eye as big as the Earth's surface. Writers of Spiritism say the red eye is an ark that's going to rescue the elect off the Earth with the dry runs going on now. They say the flying saucers coming in and going out are preparation for something big coming in and taking somebody off. Don't you see how they're going to explain that rapture? I've been taught you that for years and years and years and years. Some of you folks heard me preach for 22 years. Never was a time I didn't tell you when we went up, something would come down and give this big scientific explanation about why all these folks left. They're getting ready. Some granite blocks in the pyramid are 6 million, weigh 20 tons, and the total is 6 million tons. These blocks, 20 tons, came 500 miles from Sinai in South Egypt, Upper Egypt. The volume of the Great Pyramid is 85 million cubic feet, which would build a 4-foot wall, a foot wide, from New York to San Francisco. The ancient Babylonians, Australian, Aborigines, African tribes, South American Indians, all pinpoint Pleiades and Orion, the two constellations named in Jove, as a source of rays which periodically sweep the Earth. They think rays have come across the Earth. The UFO cycle runs this way: 1960, 1964 and 8 months, 1969 and 6 months, 1974 and 4 months, January, February, March, April. They're coming heavy in April. The next flat will be, you can quote me, 1979, the second month. And I wouldn't hesitate to be quoting on all, but let's go ahead and quote it. I'm not worried about it coming through. They haven't missed one time yet. They come right on through every shot. 4.8, 4.8, 4.8, right on through. I haven't any idea. I know it's in Stone Age England. I know it's in the pillars set up. Whoever set up those pillars knew the time these things would come in. And they come in every 4.8. All right, Otto Binder had a theory that he got from an engineer named Max. Otto and Max and Herman every time. Max Flint, quote, "Man is a hybrid from union of ancient spacemen and Earth, species of man-ape, 20 million years ago. Adam was cross-breeded with animals." That sounds wild, but you realize right now in all these universities they're beginning to suspect the theory of evolution is not a real theory, and now they're trying to talk about life coming here from outer space. And your scientists now are turning to demons for scientific fact. The third eye is inside a triangle, according to Hopi Indians and the Indians of Tibet. So it's right up there in the triangle. See it in the pyramid, on top of the pyramid? That's the all-seeing eye. The United Nations building has a little prayer chapel off there. It costs a couple $100,000. So when you go out, and that thing is just staring you right down. And more about that later. That thing is stuck right up in that pyramid, and Buddha has it right here. So when Buddha gets enlightenment or prajna, you always see a stone right there in Buddha's face, right there. And the high-caste Hindu girls in India have it right there. And when the Catholic priest gives you the ashes on Ash Wednesday, you put it right there. And it's right in the middle of the forehead. That's called the third eye. And in all spiritist groups and Satanist groups, that's the eye for advanced enlightenment and seeing and understanding spiritual things. In psychiatry, you cut open the frontal lobe and call it a lobotomy. And then you reduce the man to a robot. It's right here. And the line that runs from right here, run right smack to the eyes, and right in the line where my finger's pointing is a little old gland right at the bottom of my brain, and there isn't a scientist or doctor in the world that can tell you what that gland is for. And it's called a pineal gland. P-I-N-E-A-L. And then in the world tell you what it's for. All right, the third eye is inside a triangle found from Micronesia to Egypt. The opening in the head was to talk to the gods. 370 skulls have been found like this in Europe with the operation in the front. Gypsies appear suddenly in Europe in the 14th century. They call themselves the Dukes of Egypt. The Gypsies. Jean Dixon got her first crystal ball from a gypsy. Their language is derived from Hindu and Tibetan. Mount Everest, Himalaya Mountains, Abominable Snowman, Bigfoot, and the works. Now you see, all that stuff has got connections. All that business we're pulling in here. Grota River and Professor Hermann Ober received dot and dash signals from Venus and Jupiter in 1939. In 1958, they picked up a male voice coming in from Jupiter by ham operators. 3 dozen picked it up. Quote, "This is Nakoma from the planet Jupiter." It'll be Jupiter. Nakoma from the planet Jupiter. This voice spoke against the atom bomb in English.
In a lot of the UFO cases that maybe we'll get to later again in the phenomenon, there's the mention that these UFOs will appear at nuclear testing sites or nuclear bases where they have the actual weapons.
Yes.
And there's even reports that the weapons, a lot of reports where the weapons suddenly inexplicably become disabled when these things have appeared. And we've had military guys that you had in your documentary, even old guys who, this was years ago, testify about this. There's been a ton of sightings in Russia that are of the same thing. And they keep showing up very often, obviously not in the case of the Zimbabwe one, but they show up at the places that house the weapons that, at least since World War II, have been the most dangerous potential warning sign of us having the end of humanity if we started to hit that button. And you kind of wonder when they come and talk to these kids playfully in a way. And I can't put myself in their shoes. Who knows where they're from or, you know, what kind of time or theory of relativity they've figured out, which is obviously far beyond us. But it almost seems like they're watching us like a god a little bit, if this is the case, to make sure we don't destroy ourselves. And then they come to innocent little children, playfully talk with them in a telepathic way where these kids, they're 8 years old, 7 years old, and they're talking about how this is in 1994, before the internet, how we're destroying the planet and doing all that to it, and that's the warning they give. It's almost like that was a way for them to go communicate to the everyman through the eyes of an innocent child the things that they're trying to say by saying, don't hit that button, idiot, when they're standing at these nuclear bases or flying over these nuclear bases.
So I interviewed a number of eyewitnesses regarding the that aspect of the phenomenon, and that is they're seen over these, particularly during the Cold War, the height of the Cold War. They are witnessed in Russia and all scattered across the United States. And this launch control officer, Robert Salas, I'll never forget this. And he goes, "Well, James, the message I got when they shut our nukes off, it's almost like they were taking matches out of the hands of a baby." So he said to me, I was like, wow, I think about that all the time. You know, it's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be playing with these. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the message he got.
We have to work together to be able to maintain as much agency, as much sovereignty as we can possibly legitimately maintain in the face of the revelation of the existence of this extraterrestrial civilization. You know, the fact of the matter is they seem to be preparing now to potentially intervene directly to stop the thermonuclear war and to stop the total devastation of our ecological systems on our planet. Okay? And that means that the intervention is going to reveal their presence. And that's what's motivating a significant number of people in the Pentagon right now to be coming forward, trying to establish a systematic process for a controlled disclosure about their presence. Because they believe that if in fact this is put off and the Defense Department continues to lie about this, then what's going to happen is when the intervention takes place on the part of the extraterrestrial civilization, it's going to be totally disrupted.
All right, TV repairman Sidney Padrick, near Monterrey, Mexico, January 30th, 1965, stepped into a saucer. He was led to a man named Zeno, and he, quote, felt the presence of the Supreme Deity for the first time in 45 years. He went into a chapel lit up like with psychedelic lights, in which he said was a huge round object like a huge eye. 3 pilots died June 8, 1951, when 4 jets crashed simultaneously near Richmond, Indiana. 4 more jets cried in a burst of flame December 3rd, 1953. We can't miss it, we can't miss it. Whatever it was, and hit it, Lawrenceville, Georgia. Radar couldn't pick up what it was, whatever they hit. Jetliner down in Calcutta, May the 2nd, 1953, collided with a heavy body invisible in the radar. B-47, October 1955, down with 1 man alive, Loving in New Mexico. A ball of fire appeared beside the plane right before the crash. Identical thing in Texas 2 weeks later. All personnel in military transport, routine flight, San Diego to Honolulu, summer 39, landed 3 hours later in an emergency landing at San Diego. The men who touched the craft got a skin infection. Large gaping wounds in all the corpses. The shells of all 45 pistols lay on the floor, and the whole plane smelled like hydrogen sulfide, rotten eggs inside the plane.
Welcome to this Halloween special. In this video, allow me to tell you the terrifying story of what befell the unfortunate crew of a transport aircraft, butchered by some terrible menace as they flew through the skies. The story was written up in the 1988 book World of Mysterious Phenomena, and apparently based on some earlier writings. To impart the true horror, I shall tell the story verbatim. Something terrifying happened in the air one day in the late summer of 1939, and to this day the incident is shrouded in secrecy. All that is known is that a military transport plane left the Marine and Naval Air Force Base in San Diego at 3:30 one afternoon. It and its 13-man crew were making a routine flight to Honolulu. 3 hours later, as the plane was over the Pacific Ocean, a frantic distress signal was sounded. Then the radio signal died. A little later, the plane limped back to base and made an emergency landing. Ground crew members rushed to the craft, and when they boarded, they were horrified to see 12 men dead. The only survivor was the co-pilot, who, though badly injured, had stayed alive long enough to bring the plane back. A few minutes later, he was dead too. All of the bodies had large gaping wounds. Even weirder, the pilot and co-pilot had emptied their .45 Colt automatic pistols at something. The empty shells were found lying on the floor of the cockpit. A foul, sulphuric odour pervaded the interior of the craft. The exterior of the airplane was badly damaged, looking as though it had been struck by missiles. The incident was successfully hushed up and did not come to light for 15 years, when investigator Robert Coe Gardner learned of it from someone who was there. The mystery of what the crew encountered in mid-air that afternoon in 1939 has never been solved. Yeah, the only true horror in this story is in the details. In fact, where I'm from, this is what is known as a load of bollocks. For starters, what transport aircraft was flying with the... what was it? Oh yeah, the Marine Naval Air Force between San Diego and Honolulu in 1939. If anyone out there knows, please feel free to tell me. Because I don't think any of the US services had a transport aircraft in service capable of covering that distance with 13 personnel on board in 1939. Okay, maybe it's a mistake and the aircraft wasn't a transport, but a bomber or a patrol aircraft like a Catalina. That may be possible, but it would be a heck of a squeeze and a distance to cover, even for one of the early B-17s. And as there were only like 24 of those around at the time, pretty sure it'd be difficult to hush up if one of those got attacked by whatever this is meant to be. And of course this thing, or things, tore its way into an aircraft without actually causing it to crash, killed 12 men and critically injured another without causing the aircraft to crash, and took multiple .45 caliber rounds, assumably at close range, and then vanished without a trace. As a final note on this mysterious case, I shall cite something said to me by every one of my history professors. Who is imparting the information? Investigator, and I use this in the loosest of terms, Robert Coe Gardner, was something of a figure in the early UFO movement in the 1950s and retained some fame in the field throughout his life. But he was, quite frankly, a bit of a BS artist. From someone who was there. Well, I'm convinced. Anyway, I think it's safe to say flying beasties are not buzzing around, smashing into aircraft and killing the combined service staff personnel that apparently fly them. But I do wonder if perhaps a real-life event did inspire this yarn. On February 2nd, 1938, 2 Catalina flying boats of the US Navy were engaged in a tactical night exercise off the coast of California. Unfortunately, tragedy struck and the aircraft collided in the dark. One crashed into the sea with all hands, but the other, piloted by Lieutenant Carlton Hutchins, managed to stay airborne long enough for 3 of the crew to parachute to safety. Hutchins died in the subsequent crash and was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for extraordinary heroism in staying at the controls to save the lives of his crewmen at the cost of his own. So why would our fantastical story be linked to this tragedy? Well, in total the aircraft had an overall crew number of 13, though 3 did survive thanks to the sacrifice of Lieutenant Hutchins. Plus we have an aircraft critically damaged that is kept flying by a brave pilot. I'll admit the connections between this event and the spook story are tenuous, but it's far more likely that someone spun a yarn about an actual event they had heard some details of, rather than flying monsters attacking aircraft. Or maybe I'm just a cynic. Thanks for watching folks, hope you found this Halloween special entertaining. Regular service of a non-supernatural kind resumes tomorrow. Until then, keep safe and watch out for any flying monsters. And little children who may wish to treat you to a trick.
Now you realize the government just spent $2 million in Watergate and $25 billion going to the moon and never spent 15 minutes to tell you what that thing was? What could be funny to much a politician saying, let's get down to the truth of this, with that kind of stuff going on a Naval Air Station in San Diego and nobody even knows what it is and can't even put the stuff in the newspaper. Out there, those Hopi and Navajo and Mojave Indians, you know what they say? They say someday the Messiah is going to come on a white horse and give the land back to them. And they're probably right. You know Americans trying to educate people so superstitious. It doesn't got any sense. I saw a movie one time, a documentary movie by an amateur photographer. And I never will forget that thing. It was just a series of shots with no sound, but just music. It had no dialogue. It was all taken with an amateur camera. And it went about an hour. And all that thing was just a visionary of something here and a visionary of something there, just a shot, a cutout of something. And you know what the last picture in that thing was, that thing? It was a big old DC-5 or 7 landing in New Guinea and taking off to the airports in New Guinea. They have modern airports now, after CBs came their way back there in 42. And these planes taking off, and then it pans over the fence, and here over the fence, you see it with some of the headhunters that came down the hills of New Guinea to watch that thing. You said, old bearded man, old pygmies looking through and watching those planes taking off and coming down, not a word, not a sound. And the last picture in that film is up there on top of the plateau in the jungle where they made a clearing, and here's a whole tribe of these natives sitting around like this, passing the peace pipe, and just sitting there. And right in front was a big long log, about 60 feet long, and a cross log. Cross it like that, like a cross, and then two motors made out of logs on each side, and a tail made out of feathers. And that thing is an imitation DC-7. Sitting up there on top of that hill. And here are all these natives sitting around watching this thing. And of course the cameraman, the impression he wanted to leave with you was, look at these poor, dumb, superstitious people thinking that stupid thing they made will fly. But that isn't what's going on. What's going on is every cannibal in the deepest jungle in the world has in his racial background knowledge that something came down from up there and landed, and it's coming back again, and they're waiting for it. And you'll find that in every race, tongue, tribe, and the face of this earth. Down past the group, we had a guy get on, two of them got on a flying saucer. And they got on there, and they said when the guys got on there, they saw guys in gray uniforms. They said over here they had the only thing they had of them was an insignia, and it was a flying serpent. Flying serpent. It had wings like cherubim. It had wings like those two demoniac women in Zechariah chapter 3. And it was a serpent like they wear in the medical corps wrapped around the poles, so it can heal you. The latest thing is flying saucers are healing people. And I've been getting flaps on that. Venezuela and place where people professed when the flying saucer went over their house, somebody got cured of cancer, somebody got a new set of teeth in. And if you know anything about ancient history, you know the god of healing was a scapulus. He was a serpent. He was a serpent. Or something else. Yes, ma'am.